In the top stories, more activities approved for cruise passengers, UWI 5 Islands campus launches new unit, and Indonesian activists call for ban on lead paint. Hello and welcome to the ZIZ Midday newscast. Today is Wednesday, October 28th. I am Mervan Thompson. Nationally, following the Ministry of Tourism's press conference on Wednesday announcing the readiness of St. Kitts and Nevis for the winter cruise season, more activities have been approved by the COVID-19 task force for guests to enjoy while visiting the island. At a different press conference on Thursday, the Prime Minister's press conference, Dr. Honorable Timothy Harris, Prime Minister, announced the inclusion now of beach tours, massages, and full island panoramic tours being approved. This comes ahead of 78 cruise calls being scheduled for the remainder of the year, but the start of the cruise season, which goes until April. The ships will be operating at 40 to 60% capacity, Tourism Minister Honorable Lindsay Grant said on Wednesday. Cruise calls are expected from Carnival Cruise Line, Royal Caribbean Cruise Line, and Viking Cruise Line. The police have charged 29-year-old Celaine Phipps of Boyd's Village for the offenses of possession of firearm and possession of ammunition. During a security check at the entrance of a night spot in Bastille on October 22, 2021, a Beretta PX4 Storm pistol and several rounds of 9mm ammunition were found in Phipps's bag. She was subsequently taken into police custody along with another individual. She was charged on October 26th and has been remanded to Her Majesty's prison. The United Mexican States have launched a scholarship program called Huawei SRE 1000 Talents for the digital development of Latin America and the Caribbean, closing the digital gender gap. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has informed that the virtual training will be conducted in English and will be geared towards females. It will last from anywhere between 6 to 20 hours, depending on the chosen area. The areas of training include artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, data communication, data storage, cloud service, and macro data. It is recommended that participants have previous knowledge of ICT and/or physical, mathematical sciences, and engineering. We move now to news on the regional scene, and Education Minister Darrell Matthews in Antigua and Barbuda says the newly launched Lifelong Learning Unit of the University of the West Indies 5 Islands campus is important for the region. Sherilyn Beezer, ABS News reports.
Education Minister Darrell Matthews says a new department at the University of the West Indies 5 Islands is needed in light of few Eastern Caribbean adults having higher level certification.
That in the OECS, fewer than 10% of our adults have completed tertiary level education.
The campus launched the Lifelong Learning Unit, offering professional development courses, including some from Harvard Business School, on Monday.
Many of us, many of our peers, many of our family members, many of our citizens and residents do have an ability to do more, but have they had the opportunity? And it is for this reason that the establishment of this Lifelong Learning Center is important.
Minister Matthews says there are many benefits of continued learning, including improved self-confidence.
Incorporating lifelong learning in our lives offers many long-term benefits, not only to the individual, but to our society on a whole. Renewed self-motivation, recognition of personal interests and goals, improvement in other personal and professional skills.
He was speaking at the department's opening ceremony on Monday at the 5 Islands campus. Sherilyn Beezer reporting for ABS News.
The credit union movement wants a say on regional financial issues, according to President of the Caribbean Confederation of Credit Unions, Joseph Remy, in Trinidad and Tobago. Here's more from Terry Ann Brown Campbell, TTT News.
With more than 2.4 million members in 17 countries across the region, the Caribbean Confederation of Credit Unions is demanding to be included in regional financial decision-making. President of the Caribbean Confederation of Credit Unions, Joseph Remy, believes they should not be left out of the policy-making process.
Regionally and globally, I would really like to see, and as Josan said, the credit union movement should now be seated at the table of policy development, socio-economic policy development in Trinidad and Tobago and regionally. At the regional level, as the head of the CCCU, the Caribbean Confederation, we are now making efforts to have a seat at CARICOM at some level.
Mr. Remy notes that in Trinidad and Tobago alone, there are more than 600,000 credit union members. He adds that the local credit union body is also lobbying for policy changes.
Some of the restrictive and the measures that stymie credit unions' ability, particularly when it comes to investment and mortgages, so that we don't have to run to the commissioner's office every minute. And I'm seeing that happening. We are part of a committee now that talking about those things. Some of the simple things we talk about is the ability of credit unions paying cash government checks on those things.
Mr. Remy made his comments as he spoke on the Tuesday night forum hosted by the Movement for Social Justice. Terry Ann Brown Campbell.
And internationally, many countries banned lead paint decades ago because of its dangerous effects on health. But in Indonesia, these paints are still widely available. Now, health environmental experts and activists are renewing calls for the government to stop the manufacture and sales of lead paint. They say toxic paints remain a hidden threat to the health of young children in unexpected places. Al Jazeera's Jessica Washington reports.
In the Indonesian capital, Munadi has spray-painted cars for more than 20 years.
I know the paint contains dangerous chemicals. It's very dangerous, so I wear a mask.
Despite his concerns, he says he has to work with what he's given. Toxic paints with ingredients like lead are still commonly used in Indonesia on houses, cars, school buildings and more.
Lead exposure causes disturbances in a child's development. Their neurodevelopment is disrupted and it reduces their intelligence.
Researchers say the widespread use of lead paints creates a hidden danger in unexpected places.
We have done testing in 32 children's playgrounds around Jakarta. Almost 70% of them had lead levels above 90 ppm, which means they are not safe, and children can get lead contamination just from playing in the playground.
These volunteers are repainting equipment at playgrounds around the city with safe, non-toxic paints. A report by the local NGO Nexus Foundation found more than half of the paint brands available in Indonesia sold at least one product with extremely high lead concentrations. Many countries banned lead paints decades ago and implemented strict regulations, but the paints are still widely available here in Indonesia, and activists are calling for stronger regulations. Deteriorating lead paint is also considered a hazard, as dust and paint chips can result in dangerous levels of lead exposure.
The regulations are still voluntary. It is not compulsory for paint companies to produce unleaded paints.
She is working with paint companies in Indonesia to encourage them to make safer products. One company, Moilex, changed its paint formula in 2019 and started using organic pigments rather than lead without increasing its prices.
Placing a premium on safety is not what we were after. This was important to us as most developed countries had abandoned leaded paints as early as the late 70s.
But authorities say it is still difficult to stop the sale of lead paints.
The main problem is in small and medium-scale industries. They have problems switching to unleaded raw materials because of many factors, including price.
In the absence of regulation and enforcement, experts say toxic paints remain a dangerous threat to the health of young children. Jessica Washington, Al Jazeera, Jakarta.
The World Bank halted disbursements for operations in Sudan on Wednesday in response to the military's seizure of power from a transitional government, while state oil company workers, doctors and pilots joined civilian groups opposing the takeover. More on this France 24 report.
Another day of protest action and barricades in Sudan, as security forces launched sweeping arrests of anti-coup protesters, aiming to tighten the grip of the regime. It follows General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan's statements earlier on Tuesday, defending the military seizure of power from the Joint Civilian Military Council, saying he ousted the government to avoid civil war. In the northeastern city of Atbara, men, women and children chanted, calling for the military to cede power and to free protesters. But the streets of the capital Khartoum were left empty as locals stayed away amidst a nationwide civil strike. The international community meanwhile banded together to condemn the takeover, largely viewed as having undone 2 years of progress since the 2019 toppling of autocrat Omar al-Bashir. In a serious blow to the military on Wednesday, the African Union suspended Sudan, while the World Bank froze aid to the country, having previously allocated $2 billion to economic reforms under Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok. However, in an interview with France 24, Sudan's ambassador to Washington, Nur al-Din Sati, called for even more pressure from global powers.
It's never enough, to sway away some military elements who are with their greed for power and for wealth. I think more is needed, and that's what we are advocating for. What you have done is good for the time being, but you should continue doing more, not only in economic terms, but in diplomatic terms and in political terms.
Despite the chaos, people lined up outside airline ticket offices on Wednesday as flights in and out of Khartoum resumed, just 1 day after authorities said they would be suspended until the end of October.
And now for the weather. Present weather is 30 degrees Celsius or 86 degrees Fahrenheit, partly cloudy with slight dusties. Winds are a light air of 3 miles per hour. Seas are not exceeding 1.2 meters or 4 feet. Weather forecast for St. Kitts and Nevis today will be mostly sunny and slightly hazy conditions with a 10% or a slight chance of an isolated shower. Tonight will be mostly fair and cool. Sunset today will be at 5:41 p.m. and sunrise tomorrow at 6:08 a.m. That brings us to the end of the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Join us this evening for these stories and more in detail. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Mervyn Thompson. Have a great day.